Welcome back to Junker with Junior. Finally back at it again. Plenty of projects going on, but got one that we have to tend to. The daily driver crew cab square body. It hasn't let me down. I don't think the truck will do that. It just loves me too much, and I love it way too much. But we've got a little leak going on that we've got to address. It's been happening for a while, and it's progressively getting worse, and I have to keep adding power steering fluid to the truck because the Hydroboost is leaking. So as you can see right here, we got our brand new Hydroboost, and I ordered a reman, and that's what I thought I was getting, which I was okay with. But we ordered a Cardone 52-7248, which is the one that they list for this truck from the factory. This was a Hydroboost truck because it was originally a diesel. So I ordered this thinking it was going to be a reman, just like the box says. It's actually a brand new unit. I mean, if you look around, there's no signs of any crust or rust. The plate is brand new. I mean, it is a clean unit. I am really impressed that we got a brand new one. So that's cool and exciting. But we got to get the old one off. So we're going to start by unbolting our master cylinder. And the good part is we're not going to lose any brake fluid, which is one of the nastiest things in the world. We can just pull that forward a little bit so we have some room to work. We can get our power steering lines off and pull those out of the way. And then it's time to unbolt that bracket on the outside. And I think on the inside of the firewall as well. We're going to have to dive into that. But we have to get underneath the dash as well to disconnect the push rod that goes back to the brake pedal there. So let's get into this thing and see what we are in for. I don't think it's going to be too bad. Like I say, I'm just happy not to have to mess with brake fluid because that's some nasty stuff. So we got 15 millimeter on these nuts here. Get those broke loose. And hopefully, yeah, got some ratcheting room. Of course, I also use this bolt for the Moroso air oil separator. So whenever we're done, we can just, get that nice and straight again like it was. And it'll be just fine and dandy. The truck has been doing amazing for those of you wanting to know or keeping score of any of this stuff. Well, I say we hit. We're getting close. The truck is 49,000 miles and change. So we're rolling up on that 50,000 real quick, like probably going to be next week on the way back and forth to work or something like that. But that's a lot of miles, on an LS swap vehicle. Is there people out there that have done more? Yeah, I'm sure there is. But like I say, this is a daily. I'm really proud of it, and it just drives so good. Everything, the whole package just turned out really nice. And got to keep my close eye on all this sort of little maintenance stuff because come September we are going to LS Fest again. We're not getting derailed from that unless something out of our control happens. But life's been pretty crazy the last few years, and it's time to head to LS Fest again and go hang out with some cool stuff and cool people and check everything out. All right, so we got the replacement master cylinder. Had to change that a while back, out of the way, and we're looking at just the Hydroboost here, and you can see all inside there quite a bit of wetness going on where that thing was leaking power steering fluid. And even up top here, got a little bit coming out right in that area. So it's definitely been leaking, and I know it has been for a while, just been having to top up the fluid, but finally got around to it and found the replacement so we can get this thing done. So I'm going to carry on and get those 3 lines off there, and then it's time to start working underneath the truck inside the cab. So while I'm under here, before I get inside the truck, I might as well go ahead and get these 4 nuts off on the outside, and then it appears to be 2 bolts and 2 nuts on the inside, and then this thing should be free. One down. A little bit crusty and greasy for some reason. You'd almost think it was leaking. Okay, so got the 4 nuts loose on the firewall side, the engine bay side of the firewall. Took 3 of the nuts off, and I started one back on there just so that when I take off these other 2, that I don't have to worry about it falling and scratching the inner fender wheel up or anything like that. First, we got to get that brake push rod off there before we completely disconnect those nuts. So let's see what we're in for there. Hopefully, we'll try to get you a decent angle here. This is going to be awkward. Trying to get my big old self up under here. Somewhere up under here. There it is. There's our brake rod coming in right there, and we just got to get that pin off there. So not a fun situation. Not going to be able to film this and work at the same time. Gonna have to set down the phone and get back to you when we're underneath the hood. Well, boy, that got complicated a little quick. Had to pull off this bracket which is actually the bracket that has a tab to trip the brake light switch here in order to get to the pin to pull it out of that, to pull the hairpin clip out of this. Now we can get this washer off and get that rod off there and finish unbolting it. And you got to be contortionist to do this stuff. It's not fun to work underneath the dash, but we're chipping away at it. What a pain in the butt trying to get those two nuts off the firewall. Thank goodness for a long swivel on the end of the 15mm socket there and an impact. If not, you'd be there a long time trying to get that stuff out. It's rough on the back too, trying to lay up under there and work on everything. I actually pulled the AC duct out of the way. It goes from the AC box in the middle and comes all the way up to this vent over here. There's one screw that holds that in and just kind of wiggles up there in place. So had to get that out of the way to have any room to work up under there. It just killed the space without it. So let's pull this thing off the firewall. Remember, like I said, I put this one nut back on. Oh, I put a rag over it too, because when I touched the pedal on the inside, it tried to shoot some fluid out, and just trying to reduce the mess, because I don't like making a dang mess. Just more stuff to clean up. So we'll take out this last nut, and this thing should be free. Hey, she was on there. Get these lines out of the way. All right, we are free. A little bit crusty and greasy. Good news, the new one looks just like it so far. Let's set them next to each other, make sure we're on the right track. Ports are same location. That's pretty well standard on all Hydroboost stuff. Brackets the same. One of the important things when I was looking it up is this little offset in the bracket here. So we've got a winner there. I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on this clevis there and the pin inside, just so it has something instead of all that rust, and brake pedal gets used a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna get the thing back up in there, wrestle it a little bit, and then we'll start filming again when we get back underneath the hood to the practical stuff. All right, so the under dash work is done with the exception of putting that AC duct back up under there. I don't want to do that yet till I know everything's 100%. No sense in having one more thing in the way. It's only one screw that holds it in, so we'll do that last. Hydroboost is all tight. Got the two nuts tight on the inside, the four on the outside. GM didn't want that thing going nowhere, and I promise you it's not. So now we can get our lines back up here. I do have new O-rings I got to get out of the box to put on the tip of these lines. I mean, these ones look fine. I put these new lines on this truck when I built it, but O-rings are cheap. They're free. They came with the thing. We're going to put the new ones on there. Then we can slide that master cylinder on. Everything's in place just like nothing ever happened. Looks great. No grease on it. That's awesome because it's not leaking. So got to go through, tighten up our 3 lines, tighten up our 2 bolts that hold the master cylinder to the Hydroboost, and then as far as I can tell, it's ready to fire this thing up and double check our power steering fluid, because it's going to fill up a little bit in the Hydroboost unit itself, so we will need to top it off some. Plus it may have leaked out a little bit from the little bit I've been driving it since I topped it off last. So I'll get all that tightened up and we'll fire this dude up. Well, the power steering pump's not whining, so it must have a decent amount of fluid in it. Give her a couple of presses here to get everything kind of moving through that Hydroboost unit, even though it should be already. It just always got to check. Feels really good, just like before, honestly, no different. We just don't have any leaks out here. So let's double check. I don't see any drips. I like to put my hands around all the lines just to make sure nothing crazy going on at all. So I'd say that's sealed up. We can top off this power steering fluid down here under the alternator. That's a little bit of a pain to get to. Got to have a long funnel. Do that and we should be good. So a little bit about the Hydroboost here. Like I say, it's factory on diesel trucks. It's really nice because you don't have to worry about a vacuum source, and they're really reliable and a really good feel. I love a Hydroboost. Simple, always worked, except when they're leaking, but it still works. So the other day, a friend of mine was over here at the house and we were talking about the Hydroboost, and I told him how I had to replace it and had one on the way and such, and he wants to put one on his square body as well. And you can put them on just about anything GM. It's standard bolt pattern on that stuff. Where they get a little bit unique is where the bracket bolts up to the firewall, how this one had the 4 studs that with on the firewall with the nuts on the outside and then the 2 studs that go inward and 2 nuts on the inside. That's where they'll get you. That's not going to fit on an old muscle car. They didn't have anything that big. The firewall area wasn't that big or heavy duty to support that much bracket. So they do make smaller versions and stuff, but the aftermarket versions of Hydroboost to put on, you know, whatever retrofit on a classic Chevy and other cars as well are expensive. There's not a lot to them. I don't understand how these people can charge so much. I think it's just because they figured out how to get rid of that bracket and make their own bracket to bolt it to the firewall for whatever car you're working on, but it's just way overpriced. So some good info here for you if you want to put your Hydroboost on something that you own. You may have to modify the bracket, you may have to make your own bracket, but this Hydroboost from Cardone, part number 52-7248, is the one for this truck. Fits like a dream, works like a dream so far, no issues. That Hydroboost unit was $120. Can't beat that with a stick, especially for the fact that it's brand new and not a reman one. I was really impressed with that. But there's a core charge on them. So if you don't have a core charge, you're going to pay another $65. So now you're at $185. Well, that's still cheaper than the $600 to $1,000 that I've seen for some of these aftermarket kits. So my luck actually turned around, and this one's working in my favor. I've got the core to turn in for $65. So now I'm into this thing for $55 to replace this whole Hydroboost. Steal of a deal. If I'd known it wasn't going to be that cheap, I wouldn't have let it leak as long as I did, but it wasn't a major deal, and it didn't really have the time to get to it anyways, but we're finally here. Dirt cheap repair. If you needed one to put on your Classic, that's the way to go. Like I say, you'll have to modify a bracket and or make your own, which if you're building a car, you probably have the abilities to do that anyways. Another thing that I did on this truck. So it came with the Hydroboost from the factory, but it used to have a 6.2 diesel in here, non-turbo. Well, when I went LS, I knew I had to get a new power steering pump. The old diesel one wasn't going to work. So LS uses a press fit power steering pulley. Let me get you a light down here. So all the LS stuff uses a press on power steering pulley. Older GM versions just had a nut that holds them on. Now that's a Saginaw pump, which is almost universal to, geez, 90% of Chevy's applications through, you know, 60s all the way up until 2000s, mid 2000s. Now, with that being a factory LS power steering pump and bracket, those pumps are the same design for years and years. So it bolts up to an LS bracket. That pump I actually ordered to fit my 2006 2500 Duramax. So why did I do that? Well, on the back of the pump down here, try to get you in, there's a hose coming in right beneath that blue wire connector right there. There's a hose that comes into the back. That's the return from the Hydroboost unit up here. And I did that because I wasn't a fan of having a T in the return line, which you can do. A lot of people do that on Hydroboost units. You can just put a T in that rubber line down there just inside the frame rail, but then you kind of have a weird intersection of fluid, if you will, and you have 2 3/8 return lines teeing in, and off that T you have one leg of 3/8 going back to the pump. So I wasn't a huge fan of that. I thought that Duramax pump was the wiser choice to make, and it works out really well. Now it has its own dedicated line. The power steering has its own dedicated line, so no issues there, no fluid to intersect or do anything weird like that. So there's a couple of tips for you. If you want to put Hydroboost on something, you can definitely save a lot of money by doing it this way instead of buying those pre-made kits. You just got to be able to make your own bracket, lines, that sort of stuff. But great way to save a lot of money. So gonna double check our power steering fluid here, run this thing down the road, make sure everything's okay. I don't see any leaks here in the garage. Just want to make sure everything feels good going down the road. Don't have to worry about any issues when it's time to go to work with this thing in the AM. So that's all for now. Hope you learned something on how to swap out a Hydroboost or maybe how to put one on your own vehicle. You know, it's not a big deal. They're fairly simple, and you don't have to rely on vacuum like a lot of other stuff, which I don't have anyways. So let that power steering pump do the work. It's already there. Let it do it for you. So that's all. Thanks for watching Junko with Junior. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.